Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to our very second meeting of the new Health, Education, and Neighborhood Councils Committee. We are at a regular meeting, and it is Tuesday, August 22nd at 1 p.m., and we're in City Hall, room 1010. We do not yet have a quorum, but I do know there are several public comment cards and many people who signed up, so I wanted to start before my colleagues get here. But I also want to remind anybody in the audience, if you would like to make a public comment or if you'd like to sign up for any items, please bring it up to the front, give it to your sergeant here, just like the gentleman did. Thank you so very much. So at this point, I want to take public comment cards, and we have one person, and Mr. Herman, that's it, right? Who signed up for every item, as well as public comment. So you get, if you could come on up, 3 minutes, including public comment.
As you see, for the record, we don't have a quorum. Herb Weston Jr. and Gilbert Cedillo can't participate. But I'm going to lead it off first with general public comment. How far will the nigger go? Yeah, you, Herb, in what we are going to do to the ends, that dirty end. Send the Jews back to Korea? No, let's give them back to the dark garden and save America. I'm on general public comment, sir.
But general public comment still requires, it needs to be on
yeah, it has to do with my health.
Items pertaining to the committee, please.
It deals with my health. The garden. My fucked up garden. That's why I'm trying to save America by my First Amendment. Don't fucking interrupt me. All I'm trying to do is bury the niggers so I can have a good garden in my fucking garden. It's a way of having good health and education. Otherwise, I'd be like that bitch in Bel Air, teacher fucking young kids. Now, I see we don't have a background review. We don't have a background review on Mr. Raymond Regalado. We don't know if he has kiddie porn like you, Mr. Rue. But what about item number 2, since I'm on record with Susan Shum regarding what? Background review pending. All these pending bullshit should be up front. Transparency at the utmost so we don't have another Bel Air teacher fucking a young kid. But who cares, right? This is America. You fuck what you can get and you fuck who you fuck. That's right. And what about item 3? Health insurance and counseling advocacy program. Well, what about the budget? The budget doesn't impact the homeless people under HHH. I don't see some white nigger Herb fighting for the advocacy program under HHH because the Los Angeles Department of Aging deals with the city administrative officer to find the fiscal year 2017, 2018, a fucking standard for providing health care insurance. Fuck Obamacare, for the record. Donald Trump, do something for my health care. Then I go into the independent living of Los Angeles Department of Aging report to request for the authorization to fucking accept a fucking grant from the fucking California fucking Department for fucking Aging, Rue, for the provisions of fucking seniors that we continue to ask for family caregiver services like independent living and the Willis versus LA because we have disabled members and our fucked up families who need all this senior and family care services. I just came back from the Department of Disability complaining that independent living should sue the city of Los Angeles for a second time for inadequate housing, inadequate care, and inadequate health insurance for our fucking families, fucking Rule. You still don't have a quorum. Fuck you.
Thank you. Is there another general public comment card? And our final general public comment of Jay Bradford. 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jay Bradford from Creed LA, and we wanted to just say thank you for considering the study for the 25-foot neighborhood drilling. And we also wanted to say, please keep in mind that a lot of work will be lost and over 100,000 jobs, and that a lot of those people have only a high school diploma. and they receive retirement and full benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I am going to close public comment, seeing that there is no other public comment. Thank you. Mr. CLA, we are going to take it out of order, and we're going to start with item number 5. If you could read that in for us.
Item number 5 is the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment and City Clerk reports relative to the online voting pilot for the neighborhood council elections.
Thank you, Mr. CLA, and thank you to all the neighborhood councils who have come today. This continues our discussion from our last meeting about the upcoming neighborhood council elections and whether they should be held in 2018 or 19. And both the city clerk and Dunn have been requested to provide additional details and recommendations to our committee from the last meeting, and they have done so. But I'd like to first hear public comment. So could we have Emery Johnson and Job, and Glenn Bailey. If you guys could come on up. Do you guys have a statement from your neighborhood councils? I mean, is it 5 minutes or 2 minutes?
No CIS.
Do you guys, anyone have a CIS? No? Okay, so 2 minutes each. Anne-Marie?
Thank you. First of all, just for the record, Silver Lake is spelled with 2 words, S-L-I-V-E-R, Lake, L-A-K-E. So just for the record, it's Silver Lake, 2 words. And quickly, we did speak at the last meeting. Thank you for taking it under advisement, and I hope you got the documentation you needed to come to a vote. We, again, at the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council, support the proposal from Dunn. We would encourage the other neighborhood councils to consider delaying their elections until 2019. When we were here last, there was a few comments about cheating the constituents of their right to have a say. I don't know about the other neighborhood councils, but our neighborhood council is very clear in our bylaws on how to remove a board member if they're not, if the community, if the residents, if the regional residents are not happy with the representation that their particular board member provides. So I know and I hope that this committee takes that under advisement. It's an interesting argument, but it is a false argument because every bylaw, every neighborhood council should have a policy with regard to either censure or removal of a board member. So again, the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council strongly encourages this committee to support the recommendation from Dunn, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Ann Job, and I'm here from the Sylmar Neighborhood Council. I'm on the board, but I'm speaking only for myself. I think I reminded at the last meeting that Sylmar did vote, our neighborhood council did vote, and for reasons of not extending our own election an extra year, we felt it better to say have the election in 18, but that I personally think it makes all the sense in the world in order for us to get this right, and it's terribly important that we get this right, that we have the additional year, and that we need to start working right away to assure that in 2019 we will have a successful election. I'd like to personally speak on the behalf of neighborhood councils being called upon to help elections for everything. It is unconscionable that we have so few people turn out to vote, not only for neighborhood council members, but for council members, for mayors, for senators, etc. And it seems like we could be an army that this next year and a half now that we would have to really make LA step up and have our people feel like it's important to vote, that their voices do count, that if you don't vote, you really do need to shut up. And that if people aren't feeling like it matters and that their vote doesn't matter, then that's on us to correct that. So I would like us to form a coalition, city council, neighborhood councils, to get the vote out when we do have our elections. And in closing, I think online should close before the day of the election, and that at the polls, it be just paper.
Thank you. And for the record, we have Councilmember Gil Cedillo, who has arrived, and we now have quorum.
Good afternoon, Glenn Bailey. First, I wanted to mention I'm a member of the Executive Committee for the Valley Alliance and Neighborhood Councils, and as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, the Valley Alliance and Neighborhood Councils, representing 34 neighborhood councils in the Valley, did vote to support the extension of the 2018 elections to 2019. There should be a letter on file regarding that. I am also president of the Northridge East Neighborhood Council and a board member of Encino, past president of Encino. Both neighborhood councils had online voting. Both of them, for the actual process of voting, I think went pretty smoothly. The problem we had was registration, and I kind of, as a not directly involved, traced that back to the original contract. When it came before the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, it was approved by a bare majority of 4-3, and then we discovered that there was no component in that contract to include voter registration. So here we are doing online voting, a contract that started with approval of the commission, no inclusion of voter registration. And on that line, Northridge East did vote on this council file. As part of its recommendation, asked that all of the resident voters be added into the online voting database. And then also just, we didn't take the decision of an extension lightly. However, in the case of Northridge East, we currently have 2-year terms. We are transitioning to 4-year staggered terms. So the net increase would be moving from what will be a 4-year, we actually would have a 3-year instead of the 4-year, if that makes sense. And then lastly, we are way past the time frame to start elections because the stipulation worksheets ought to have been out months ago for neighborhood councils to weigh in on the different options, and so we're kind of past the gate as far as the time, and that's another argument for 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have, for the record, we have Councilmember Herb Wesson, who's joined us. And last speaker, Paul Bowers. And as Mr. Bowers comes up, I'd just like to state, there are 1,754 board seats in the entire neighborhood council system, the 96 neighborhood councils. And in 2016, our neighborhood council election voter turnout was 25,571 voters. So yes, we have a long way to go. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you. I'm here from the Echo Park Neighborhood Council as the Chief Information Officer, and I'm here to advocate for an enhanced outreach campaign funded by the city to engage more of our constituents, as the neighborhood council should be kind of the interface and responsive to local needs. It feels to me like the catalyst, the glue for connecting our residents to City Hall, and as such, with it as a volunteer position, although some people don't like that term, and in my experience, one which has great turnover and a long learning curve for many people who were underserved by their civics education in school. There's a bit of a period where new members, oftentimes entire boards, really need to learn basics of civic engagement, including parliamentary procedures, so that meetings can run effectively. We really need to get more people aware of and engaged in the neighborhood council system, and as such, we can't spend all of our time working on education, remedial, training, and that's why I'm here to speak in favor of the city aggressively reaching out and recruiting and promoting the neighborhood council's full participation as a legitimate member.
Thank you. Seeing no more additional speaker cards, I'd like to ask the city departments to come on up. If I could have the Dunn as well as the city clerk. I really want to thank Dunn and the city clerk for meeting with my office on numerous occasions and your extensive reporting as well. And the city attorney, I don't think they're here, but we've had extensive conversation with them as well. And I just have two quick questions before I open up to my colleagues. But, I think we're in general agreement that the benefits of moving the election to 2019 outweigh the detriments. But for a handful of councils that seem adamant that they should have a option to have elections in 2018, could we offer the selections as an option to councils that strongly want to do voting in 2018? And can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. Gracie Liu, General Manager for the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. Yes, we can. Any neighbor council who chooses to have a process to replace their board members in 2018 can instead choose to have a selection process, which is it's basically like a caucus, a non-secret voting process, which some neighbor councils already do, many in the harbor area. There's one on the west side as well. And so we can offer a stipulation worksheet for neighbor councils to go to selection, and they can choose to do that, and it would override the current bylaws that they have, and we would assist them in holding their selection in 2018 instead.
Great. I think that's
Holly Walcott, the one stipulation that I just want to make clear for the record is that they would have to do it, their stipulation would have to include, or when we sent them out, that whether it was for 1 year or for 5 years, because the next election would be in either 2019 or 2021, so we would need for them to be aware of that.
Okay. So it would be for 1 year.
We could offer the neighbor council the option; they could vote. On the stipulation worksheet, it would state, say, would the terms be, how would you do the terms? So would it would be 1 year, or would you prefer to have it so that the next election cycle will be in 2021, so that'll be 5 years?
Okay, great. Thank you. And also for the city clerk, in your report, you noted that if online elections were to be conducted again, that you would need to conduct a full review of the voting process. And what would that look like?
Go ahead.
All right. Chris Garcia, I'm with the city clerk elections. What that would look like, what we envision is kind of a two-step process, although there'd be more details later on. First, we'd look at the voter registration portal. The city clerk didn't necessarily wasn't the custodian of that process for the 2016 election, so we would want to familiarize ourselves with the entire process, see where changes can be made along with the vendor, see what steps we can put in place to allow the voter at home or at the library to interact with the portal and make it easier for them to sign up and understand what the voting requirements are. The second step is at the polls on Election Day, we'll look and see how we can improve Election Day processes so that voters walking in for the first time can easily register and reduce wait times. And with that, we'll enhance poll worker training, upgrade our voting hardware, and also, again, work with neighbor councils on streamlining their voting requirements.
Great. Colleagues, any questions? Thank you. Seeing there's no other questions, thank you so very much on this item. And I do have a few recommendations which I passed out to all the colleagues and to everyone else. These are written, and this has been a very tough issue for the committee. And neighborhood councils were elected in 2016 for 2 years. But the issue in the election, is that as we plan it for 2018, we want to make sure that we have a robust system that we could be proud of, where the election system would work, and as stated by many of the testimony, a robust system where we could have more outreach, opportunity to improve our online voting as well. So I really want to thank all the neighborhood councils who have provided input on this issue and their clear willingness to from neighborhood councils to consider the 2019 elections. If that meant that we could address the lingering issues of the various election problems that we had in the past. So I want to make a recommendation that we move forward with the shift to fix, and so we can fix the outstanding issues and align the neighborhood council elections to odd number of years, which we need to do anyways. This extra year and a half will give our committees and departments the ability to take such questions in the neighborhood council system, and questions such as stakeholder status, online voting, ballot types, voting age, and many other issues that have been brought up. With that said, the city needs to ask when the neighborhood councils want their next elections, but there were a handful of neighborhood council members, 6 to be in particular, who felt very strongly having the ability to have an election in 2018. Therefore, in consultation with Dunn, and in fairness to those neighborhood councils, I wanted to instruct Dunn to offer the stipulation sheets to all councils to allow them to hold selections in 2018 if they feel strongly that the new board members if they need to have the election in 2018. So this will give the options for those neighborhood councils selecting to do so to have an election in 2018. I also agree with all the recommendations from the city clerk and Dunn, and we look to continuing the online voting pilot project and allowing neighborhood councils to again choose if they want to opt into the online voting system in 2019. The clerk's report and the time that we have between now and those elections make me confident that these issues from 2016 are being addressed. So additionally, I want to instruct Dunn to convene a working group of interested neighborhood council members to provide recommendations for the 2019 election on how to craft an effective candidate recruitment process. Finally, in terms of the report, I'd like to move that to approve that the city clerk's recommendation in full and approve recommendations number 2 in Dunn's report, as the other recommendations are materially similar to the city clerk's report. Colleagues, I'd like to move approval on these recommendations with the additional instructions.
I have a question about the, if somebody could explain in a little more detail the online voting component. Are we voting to definitely put that in? Are we voting to have that reviewed where it comes back with recommendations later, or what? I kind of missed.
Well, do you want to? Well, it gives us options, in short.
Holly Walcott, city clerk.
Since I'm supportive of it.
Right, but what we would have to do.
I'm not prepared to say that I want to go to that right now.
Okay, but what our recommendations do say is that we would be working this year to work on the database and on the build out so that it would be an option for 2019. So we would be expending some funds on the build out of the system so that that opportunity would be available for 2019.
So, Councilmember Weston, yes, it does not require us to do the online voting, and right now, currently as it is, only 63 neighborhood councils have opted in.
50. There are 50 built out. I don't know how many. Right. If there's been others that have opted in, I'd have to defer to Gracie.
How much money are we spending?
What was our? I don't remember.
On that component. I'm not opposed, but the way the system was before was terrible.
Right, and that's why
and Mr. Chair, I'm going to back you on this, whatever. But whatever the money is, it might be better spent if we just had more staff that was actually working with it. So I'm just not there until I get a...
Well, unfortunately, we're in the position now where we don't want to be having the same discussion next August. If we're going to do it and we're going to do it right, we need to make the decision to go forward and do it right. So, I mean, we can do all the planning, but we have to work with Everyone Counts. So we would be working with Everyone Counts, we would be spending about $250,000 this year. The remaining money that we were given to conduct neighborhood council elections in these recommendations, we work with the CAO to provide the funds to Gracie at a later date for outreach.
So, Mr. President, just to assure you, so we will, the system needs to be built out, especially with all the problems that occurred during the last pilot. with online voting for those who selected to do so.
Which were largely employer. I mean, it was largely our staffing errors that occurred.
Right. So in a year from now, I mean, my office will be monitoring closely now, and I will be asking the departments to continually come back and give us reports on how the online voting is working. And just like yourself, Councilmember, the other council members have expressed lots of concerns about online voting. So this gives us that additional year to build up the system to robustly, so we can build confidence. And I want to make sure that I feel confident. Because even though I support online voting like you, obviously there were so many flaws, but I want this year for the department to have that opportunity to fully build it out so we can have that faith in the system.
I support you.
So,
So
so it will come back to us for a vote again. But of course, we would have to be confident in it so we could expand on it. Is that okay?
I do. I would like to recommend one other thing, though. And I didn't write it out. I may have mentioned it to you. I think we should put together a committee of, and not an overly large committee, of the neighborhood councils. Pick whatever the appropriate number and have them work to present us a plan going forward where it relates to the elections and all. I'd like, how can we make this
It is our intention to do that, to go out into the community and take this year to do roundtables similar to what we did for the funding program, so that we're working with all neighborhood councils and making sure all of their issues are both heard and considered, and that they have input on how we are
Well, that's
running.
important to me because I want to hear from them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Completely agree.
Yes, Mr. President, we've already been talking with Dunn, and actually, instruction number 4 does part of that, where we're asking the neighborhood, we're going to create a working group of neighborhood council members to provide recommendations on effective candidate recruitment. And we have 2 new commissioners for Bonk that are coming on board, and I've met with the Bonk commissioners to see how we could better figure out how we work with them, as well as in process of creating another working group. But I would like to add item number 5, then, if we could amend the recommendation to ask Dunn for a report back on what was discussed before with the Council President's Office about reporting back on how additional working groups can be formed with neighborhood councils in respects to all the different issues that we stated, whether it's voting age, whether it's online voting, ballot type, stakeholder status.
Time of elections.
The whole, which you outline in your report, which is many, many.
And
issues.
one final,
How do we help fund outreach for elections? I have a problem with us requiring the actual neighborhood councils to fund. I mean, so I think if we did it, remember, I've done this for a couple of years. They're the greatest people that I've met. And if you give them a task, they'll come back and give us recommendations that make sense.
and my final one that I would like to add at your indulgence is the issue about documentation for voting. One of course, being an election official, documentation to me has always been a voter suppression issue, but it's also a security issue, because while we did require all the documentation for the candidates in our candidate filing system, where we didn't have any problems, we also deleted all the documentations immediately upon verification. But one of the things that would simplify and make the process more expedient and definitely more secure would be to eliminate the documentation required. So I know that's controversial because neighborhood councils want to preserve their neighborhood identity, but that still says to me voter suppression.
Right. And that was a discussion that we've had in lengths. So yes, I mean, if you could modify the language to include all the items that was listed by the council president, as well as some of the other ones that we've identified. But yes, that issue in particular is a very sensitive topic that needs vetting, and that's where if Dunn could report back on whether it's another working group of neighborhood councils, whether it's the alliances that we use, or BONC that we already have in existence. So we want to make sure there's a division of labor and we properly outreach and effectively use what resources we already have. So if you could include that in the report back as well, in the recommendations as well.
So I second your motion.
Great. Thank you. So moved. So now we'll move to item numbers 1 and 2. And they're both new appointments to Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, or BONC. If I could have them together. And I had the pleasure of meeting with both these appointees, and I'm very excited about their energy and their diverse perspectives that they bring to BONC. Mr. CLA, can you read in both 1 and 2?
Item number 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Raymond Regaldo for the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners for the term ending June 30th, 2020. Item number 2 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Shusig Susan Avakian to the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners for the term ending June 30th, 2022.
Great, thank you. And they're already seated up here. Thank you so much for coming up. If you guys could briefly introduce yourselves and talk about maybe what you want to accomplish in the commission. I know we had a lengthy conversation, and I'm very excited for both of you. And I actually spoke with BONC yesterday and let them know that they're very excited to meet you as well. So if you could introduce yourselves.
I'm Shushik Susan Avakian. I'm the current treasurer for the Sunland Tahanga Neighborhood Council. I just started this term, the last term. I'm also a loan officer and a mom of 2 boys. I've lived in Sunland Tahanga since 1998. And I started to get involved in my community mainly because I really believe that if you want to change something, you have to be part of it. And I got tired of all the people complaining about things not changing. So I rolled up my sleeves and got involved. I really hope to bring the experiences I had as a newcomer into the neighborhood council system into my position with BONC, and I hope that we can make a big difference together.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ray Regalado. I am the president of Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council. This is my 6th year as a neighborhood council member, my 5th year as president. And I bring to...
Excuse me, Mr. Herman, this is your first and final warning. I let it go. I let it go earlier when you're here. This is your final warning. If you interrupt again, you will be escorted out. Okay. Sergeant, if you could escort him out, please. Thank you. I apologize, Mr. Regalado. This is a preview to what you will be dealing with in the commission.
Well,
and we're going to approve you real quick so you don't change your mind.
Let me say that I've been with LA County. I'm an employee of LA County, and I am the supervisor that oversees the countywide dispute resolution program. So I'd be happy to utilize whatever skills I might have in that area to assist. The neighborhood council is probably the best way for communities to become civically engaged because it actually gives them an opportunity to be able to have a voice in and around their community efforts and the community development. In fact, that's the whole reason why I got involved. Some of the big issues that I have been involved with down in the harbor area in my capacity with the Los Angeles County Human Relations Commission was an issue that occurred down in the Harbor Gateway area many years ago revolving around gang violence and the effect that it took on a community. Many of the community members would ask me, Ray, what is it that we can do to help take back our communities? And I'd say get involved. Get involved with your communities, talk to your elected officials, your departments, get intimately known with law enforcement and so on. And so I said the best avenue is the neighborhood council. The unfortunate part about that is that when I would come and give them that type of advice, I would go home to my home in San Pedro and I would just close the door and watch TV for the rest of the night. So I said, if I'm going to preach this stuff, I'm going to have to get in there and actually get involved. And so I sought out my local neighborhood council. I liked what I saw, and I just said, I'm in completely. Given the opportunity to be on Bonk, I am really excited to be able to put whatever skill sets I have, along with the fact that I believe that we're at a great place where we can actually make a difference in our neighborhood councils by utilizing the talent that our neighborhood councils have in place right now with some of the more seasoned neighborhood council members. I think that's probably the way to come at looking at the issue of voting that I heard early on. There are some members who've been around that time around who can be very instrumental in that. But also training new neighborhood council members, right off the bat, when the first time out, given an opportunity to be trained by people who are seasoned, people who understand the process and respect the process. So those are just a couple things that I'd like to kind of hopefully work on in the future.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions? No. Thank you so very much. And before we vote... Thank you very much. And we're going to approve you real quick. But before we do have two public comment cards. So if we could have... if you guys could get back to your seats. Thank you. I appreciate that. Glenn Bailey and Gary Forsythe. 2 minutes each.
Glenn Bailey. Again, I'm president of the Northridge East Neighborhood Council, one of the 17 neighborhood councils in the North Valley that one of these prospective nominees will be representing. I wanted to comment not about the nominee because I don't know her, but I do want to comment on the overall city process and the representation of neighborhood councils. So during the past almost year of the previous commissioner, I haven't heard from any of the neighborhood councils other than the one that she was a member of where she was attending as a board member that commissioner ever attended those neighborhood council meetings and reported to them on what was going on and have a dialogue. The previous commissioner, Lydia Grant, for 3 years attended every single neighborhood council meeting on not every meeting, but on a regular basis. So number one, my expectation, not just for this commission, but since I'm North Valley, I'm saying my expectation, the expectation of the other neighborhood councils, is that the commissioner visit the neighborhood councils that they are representing on the commission on a regular basis, and we have that dialogue. Secondly, the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils, which is the 34 neighborhood councils in the Valley, in the past has had both of our North Valley and South Valley commissioners attend the monthly meetings, again, because there's a standing item on the agenda regarding the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. We have not had a commissioner, other than the South Valley Commissioner, Mr. Schaefer, Commissioner Schaefer, we have not had a North Valley Commissioner for over a year attending the Valley Alliance. So therefore, the neighborhood council leaders who take the time every month to get updated on all things city, whether it's departments and the mayor and the city council members, the general manager, et cetera, they have an expectation of having that same dialogue with their commissioner. So I'm asking I'm letting you know that's our expectation and asking that be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Gary Fordyce, North Hills West Neighborhood Council, speaking as an individual. I would like to join Glenn Bailey in all his comments and support each and everything that he said. It was very comprehensive and thorough. My purpose here today is to congratulate our two new commissioners. I look forward to their good works, and I would like to invite Ms. Avakian to attend North Hills West Neighborhood Council meetings as regularly as possible, and as well as the whole North Valley, but in particular, I would like to start seeing their participation. We miss the previous efforts that were so accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate that. Seeing no other comment cards, I'd like to move this item to approve items 1 and 2 without objection.
So moved.
Thank you. Items 3 and 4, I'd like to move, these are both standard Department of Aging transmittals, and I propose that we move these items on consent.
So moved.
Thank you, and that concludes our agenda for today, and thank you so much to all the neighborhood councils for your involvement and all your comments and your letters. Thank you so very much.